My parents stopped paying my tuition unless I apologized to my cousin, so I exposed his fake company through a case study. They celebrated him and accused me of bitterness. So I did what any disruption to family. Hi, I'm Mason, 19, and the last normal day I knew ended with my parents telling me I was disrupting the family's precious harmony and putting my college tuition on ice until I apologized to their shining star of a nephew, my cousin Caleb. So I stuffed a bag, cleared out my campus locker, and figured if they wanted quiet, I'd give them a void. It all kicked off over Thanksgiving weekend, not because of some earth-shattering betrayal or a blow-up worthy of a headline, but because Caleb strutted into dinner flashing a new Rolex and spent a solid 3 minutes bragging about how his crypto consulting startup had just snagged another client while winking at me like we were sharing some inside joke, which we absolutely weren't, so I rolled my eyes. And apparently that tiny motion was my great offense, because my mom's fork hit her plate. My dad did that corporate throat clear. My aunt, Caleb's mom, squinted and announced that my attitude was exactly why Caleb was thriving while I was still finding myself. And when I said I was double majoring in computer science and linguistics, she fired back with a smug, exactly, right before Caleb let out that rich kid yacht club laugh and told me some people were thinkers and some were doers, which pushed me to mutter that some were just trust funds with business cards. Not exactly poetry, but enough to make my aunt gasp like I'd slapped her child, drain the color from my mom's face, and cue my dad to deliver the phrase that would blow everything up. Mason, apologize. Right now? I didn't, and instead asked why I should apologize for telling the truth, while Caleb brushed it off with a shrug and he's got stuff to work through. And later that night my parents pulled me aside to inform me I'd embarrassed the family and wouldn't be returning to school unless I fixed things, meaning unless I groveled. So I did the opposite and packed my things, left a note on the counter that said, "You want harmony? Enjoy the silence," and disappeared into the spare room of my friend Jasper, a theater kid wrapped in scars and sarcasm, who took one look at my duffel bag and asked whether this was family disaster or romantic fallout. And I muttered same thing. So he let me crash without prying, in a room that smelled like lavender and ramen where I stayed up building freelance gigs, automation scripts, chatbot prototypes, even a browser extension that translated corporate buzzwords into honest English-like, turning synergy into confused chaos and family business into nepotism playground, while my parents sent no texts, no calls, just a formal email from my dad's assistant informing me my tuition had been paused pending behavioral resolution, a phrase that stuck to my brain like gum on pavement. Meanwhile, Caleb posted a LinkedIn update saying entrepreneurship was about rising above conflict with grace, paired with a photo of him on a jet ski. And even though I could have ignored it all and waited for my parents to miss me, getting pushed out of the life I was building made me wonder what I'd create if no one could shove me aside again. So I started crafting something dangerous, not a hack, not a virus, but a profile of Caleb, charting every exaggerated claim, every imaginary investor, every client who was really just a frat buddy paid in beer to write a testimonial. And since gathering proof was something I happened to excel at, within 2 weeks I had receipts, literal ones. And then came the breakthrough thanks to a Slack leak from one of Caleb's employees, a guy named Dylan who'd been promised equity but kept getting paid in company merch. And he sent me screenshots of Caleb bragging at a bar about pretending to be a CEO until his mom landed him a real job, with messages like, "Let them think we're legit," and "Optics are the product. Plus, just say we're pre-revenue. It sounds better than no idea how to invoice." And there it was. Caleb wasn't a visionary. He was a cosplayer and business casual whose company was standing only because family money held it up like a drunk leaning on a parking meter. So I bundled everything together, screenshots, financial breadcrumbs, fake testimonials tied to the same WeWork IP, and built a clean one-page site titled, "Optics Are the Product," an unofficial case study of Caleb Harrow's CEO act, with no slander, no commentary, just organized facts, and I tweeted it anonymously. It blew up in under an hour, hitting a startup subreddit, then Hacker News, then a tech ethics blog with a piece called The Emperor's New Pitch Deck. And by morning Caleb was trending, by noon his face was a meme template, and by evening my parents tried calling, but I didn't pick up because the apology they wanted was coming with interest, and my mom left a voicemail sounding like someone trying to manage a PR meltdown with a teaspoon, saying they'd seen the article or whatever it is, And that Caleb was very upset, and this wasn't the kind of behavior that, well, just call them, okay? But I didn't, because apparently Caleb spent the whole day demanding takedowns and tweeting about defamation like he was leading a hostile takeover, while Jasper made popcorn and told me I'd just exposed a rich kid with a Bluetooth headset and a savior complex and crowned myself the Batman of dysfunctional family tech drama. And the thing is, it grew past Caleb. That website cracked something open, and soon DMs were pouring in from people like me. Folks sidelined for shinier siblings, kids dismissed as difficult because they didn't bow to the family favorite, and one message hit me hardest. Your site made me realize I'm not crazy. And then came the twist. Caleb's so-called flagship client, the one he never stopped bragging about, a boutique app development outfit, posted a blunt statement on LinkedIn that read, "We have never contracted services from Harrow Innovations. Any statements to the contrary are false." Boom. That detonated across the internet. My inbox flooded with interview offers. A YouTube creator wanted to feature me in a video titled, "How to Take Down a Nepo CEO Without Getting Sued." Somebody even asked if I'd mint the site as an NFT. I didn't care about money. What I wanted was for my parents to read every word on that page and understand something real. I wasn't furious anymore. I was awake. 3 days after the site launched, my dad emailed me directly. Not his assistant, not a forwarded memo, but an honest message from his own account. Subject line, "Let's talk. Body, your mother and I understand that you're hurting. But this approach, public shaming, it's beneath you. Come home. Let's resolve this as a family." I read it 6 times. Then I wrote a reply, "No tuition. No apology. No address. You made those terms. I'm just working within them." I didn't send it. I archived it. Because the truth was, I didn't want to win anymore. I just wanted it to be over. But once you drop a match into a dry forest, you don't always get to pick how far the fire spreads. A second tech blog published another expose, digging deeper into Caleb's company and discovering he'd been pitching himself as a startup mentor to high schoolers, selling seats at something called Founders Bootcamp for $400 a head. One brochure even read, "Learn from the man who scaled from basement startup to 6 figures in under a year." Except that 6 figures? Pure family cash. Verified. And the parents? Now livid. Suddenly, I wasn't the villain, I was the whistleblower. Caleb, meanwhile, vanished from social media. His startup site redirected to a 404-page. My aunt, now Diana in this version of my life soap opera, posted a cryptic Facebook rant about betrayal by those you feed. Jasper nearly choked on his cereal laughing. I didn't, because underneath the satisfaction, something small and treacherous tugged at me. Guilt. I'd expected blowback. What I didn't expect was the part where my mom came to find me. In person. At Jasper's door. No text. No warning. Just her, wrapped in a trench coat like she was starring in her own legal drama. "I need to see you," she said, breath shaky. "This has gone far enough." I stepped onto the porch. Jasper disappeared like smoke. My mom looked older, not just worn out, but like someone whose script had been ripped away mid-performance. She held out a folder. "What's this?" I asked. "Your re-enrollment paperwork. For next semester. Signed. Paid in full." I blinked at it. "And what? I'm supposed to say thank you?" "No," she said softly. "You're supposed to know we were wrong." That stopped me cold. She meant it. Or at least she meant something honest. We thought we were protecting the family. Keeping peace. But all we did was keep the lie comfortable. I crossed my arms. "And Caleb?" She winced. "Your aunt says you ruined his future." "His future was a hologram." She nodded faintly. "I know." Silence settled between us. Then she said the words I didn't realize I'd been waiting for. "You were right, Mason. And we owe you more than tuition. We owe you respect." It didn't fix everything, but it cracked something open. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own house. I felt seen, just a little. I didn't re-enroll immediately. An apology wasn't going to buy back a year of being ignored. Instead, I asked for something else. "I want a family meeting," I told her. "Everyone. Dad, Caleb, and Diana. No redirecting. No spin. Just the truth." She flinched, but agreed. We met at my parents' house, in the same beige living room where I'd once been ordered to apologize for the sake of family. This time, I walked in like I belonged there. Like I carried the floor. And in a way, I did. Not legally, but morally? Absolutely. The kid they dismissed was now the reason anyone was even sitting down. Caleb was already there, pale, jittery, furious in that performative way rich boys get when they've run out of backup dancers. He opened with, "So this is a witch hunt now?" I said, "No. A witch hunt assumes you're innocent." My dad rushed to keep things from igniting. "We're here to listen, not defend." Diana scoffed. "This is character assassination." "No," I said. "This is consequence. You built Caleb's reputation on borrowed credibility. I just returned the invoice." Then I laid everything out. Calm, clear, methodical. Not cruel, just undeniable. By the end, Caleb looked like a glitched video game character. Diana looked ready to sue the air itself. My dad looked ashamed. My mom looked proud. "I'm not angry anymore," I said as I stood. "I'm done being your family's footnote." And I walked out. Not with drama. Not with a slam. Just with the kind of quiet I'd earned. The kind that feels like peace. After the meeting, I didn't go back to Jasper's. I drove somewhere neutral, somewhere quiet. A public library 2 towns over. I sat by a window and opened my laptop. Not to expose anyone. Not to build anything new, but to write. For myself. I started a letter. Not to Caleb. Not to my parents. To me. I wrote. "You didn't imagine it. You weren't too sensitive. You were in a system built to keep you quiet. You broke it. That matters." When I finally looked up, the sunlight had shifted. I watched a kid argue with his dad about which science book to check out, and the dad didn't mock him. He listened. Something small twisted in my chest. Hope. That maybe someday that could be my life too. A family where honesty doesn't cost you love. Later that night, my dad texted me a photo of my re-enrollment confirmation. No lecture. No preamble. Just a caption, "Welcome back, son." I stared at it for a long time. Not because I forgave them. Because I no longer needed their approval to stand tall. I was going back. But not as the same kid. Spring semester began cold and quiet. And for the first time in my life, that quiet belonged to me. I didn't move back into campus housing. I rented this tiny attic apartment with creaky floors and a window overlooking an alley full of pigeons and graffiti that felt like it had been spray-painted during an existential crisis. It smelled like ambition and bad decisions, and honestly, I loved that. My parents offered to help me move. I told them no. They offered to buy furniture. Still no. Eventually, they offered something that actually mattered. A conversation, no strings attached. We met at a diner halfway between my place and theirs. My dad ordered black coffee. My mom wore that cardigan she only brings out when she's not quite sure where she fits in the moment. "We want to make things better," she said. I believe that, I told them. But better starts with truth. They didn't argue. They just listened while I explained what it felt like growing up as Caleb's contrast. How silence had become its own kind of erasure. How withholding wasn't discipline, but dismissal. My dad took a deep breath and said, "You deserve better from us." It hit me like an anchor, not because I needed the validation, but because they needed to finally speak it. As I walked out of the diner, my mom pressed a small envelope into my hand. Inside was a simple card. No check, no key, just a handwritten note. No more conditions. Just love. It wasn't everything, but it was something. And for the first time, I felt free to choose what came next. A month later, I gave a guest lecture. Jasper had mentioned me to his media professor. Apparently, the chaos I sparked had been written up in a student ethics journal, and the class was packed. Some students knew the whole Caleb saga, some didn't. I opened with a joke. "If anyone here has a golden child in the family, blink twice." They laughed. Then I shared the thing I wish someone had told me years ago. Staying silent doesn't make you noble. It just makes you disappear. And sometimes the only way to be seen is to shine a light on the mess. After class, a first-year student approached. Shy, hoodie sleeves covering her hands. She whispered, "Thank you. My brother's the Caleb in our house." And I thought it was just me. I didn't hug her. I didn't tear up. I just said it's not. That night, a package showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a slim box with my name printed sharply on the front. I opened it. A custom pen sat inside, engraved with 5 words. "Write your own damn story." No note. No explanation. But I knew it was from my dad. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a problem they were trying to correct. I felt like a person they'd finally taken the time to see. Like I'd rewritten the family script and signed it myself. Spring melted into summer, and for once the quiet around me felt earned. I'd taken on a new freelance contract building a secure API for a nonprofit helping whistleblowers. Fitting work, almost therapeutic. One night, Jasper hosted a "You didn't burn out or get sued" party. 3 people showed up. One brought bean dip. One thought it was someone's birthday. Jasper handed me a drink and said, "So, golden boy, any regrets?" I paused, took in the mismatched cups, the thrift store banner that read "You did it," and the soft hum of my laptop uploading my latest build. "No," I said, "only that I didn't walk out sooner." He toasted to that. The next morning, I got an email from Caleb. Subject line, "Hey." No message, no signature, just a single attachment, a PDF titled Statement of Dissolution, Harrow Innovations, LLC. I opened it. Official. Signed. Witnessed. He was shutting it all down. I didn't reply, not out of bitterness, just clarity. That chapter was closed, and I was already deep into writing the next one. A month later, I got invited onto a podcast, not to talk about the Caleb saga, but about digital ethics, accountability, and how families aren't exempt from systems of favoritism. They're just experts at hiding it between casseroles and Christmas cards. The host asked, "What advice would you give someone in your shoes?" I said, "If your value has a price tag on it, someone else probably put it there." Then I paused and added, "And it's okay to walk away from the people who want a refund when you won't stay small." That clip went mildly viral, not earth-shattering, but enough. Enough that people started messaging again. One message came from Caleb's younger sister. She wrote, "I always wondered what happened behind closed doors. Thanks for turning the lights on." That one hit different. It made me realize this whole thing wasn't just my story anymore. It was a permission slip for the ones who'd never been allowed to speak. And I wasn't done writing yet. By midsummer, the storm had mostly settled. Caleb stayed offline. Aunt Diana resurfaced just long enough to post a passive-aggressive Facebook status about entitlement in the younger generation, only to get instantly ratioed by 3 cousins and an aunt who never comments on anything. My dad texted me a thumbs-up emoji and a link to an article titled, "How to Actually Say I'm Proud of You to Your Kid Without Sounding Like a Fortune Cookie." Progress, I guess. And me? I started building something new. Not just software this time. A platform. A real space for students like me, like the ones who'd written after everything blew up. A place where their voices wouldn't be sidelined the way mine once was. The ones buried in favoritism, ghosted in their own families. I named the platform Unseen, a digital community packed with resources, mentorship, and a rotating lineup of speakers who knew exactly what it felt like to be the shadow in someone else's spotlight. The tagline was simple: "You matter, even when they don't see it." Jasper handled the branding. And Jordan, yeah, that Jordan, the tech wizard from Declan's story, if you caught that crossover, jumped in to help architect the back end. We kept everything clean, lightweight, and anonymous by default. Within weeks, signups climbed into the hundreds, then thousands. One user wrote, "I never thought being the forgotten sibling had a name. It does now. Thanks." I printed that message and pinned it above my desk. Not for ego, for direction. Anytime I thought about slowing down, I glanced at that note and pushed forward. Because I wasn't just writing code anymore. I was building a mirror. The first Unseen meetup took place in a public park. No speeches, no press. Just folding chairs, borrowed AV gear, iced tea, and name tags. I didn't know if anyone would show. 37 people came. One kid said, "My dad calls me the spare." Right to my face. A girl said her mom kept her sister's graduation photo on the mantle while hers hung on the fridge under a grocery list. They weren't looking for therapy. They just wanted proof that their experience wasn't some glitch in the simulation. At one point, a college sophomore with a quiet voice and 3 visible anxiety tics asked, "What do we do when the people who made us won't see us?" I didn't give him a polished TED Talk answer. I said, "You build something so honest they can't look away anymore." Then added, "And you stop begging to sit at a table that only ever had one seat for the golden boy." They clapped, the kind of applause that means finally, someone said it. Later, I stood by the parking lot holding a trash bag full of empty teacups and just breathed. No spotlight, no performance, just earned quiet. And that felt like everything. That fall, I was invited to a university panel, Tech Truth and the Power of Walking Away. I didn't think I belonged there. The other panelists had patents, books, facial recognition startups, 3 TEDx talks between them. But after the event, a student approached me. Oversized hoodie, eyes like mine when I was 17. He said, You're the reason I didn't go home last summer. Not in a runaway way, just in a survival way. He handed me a drawing. Black ink on notebook paper. A lighthouse, except instead of shining light, it cast binary code across the waves. You showed me how to be the signal, he said. I still keep that drawing beside the first printed page of Unseen's code base. That night, my dad texted me. No words this time, just a picture of himself on the porch, reading the student ethics journal that featured my story. He was smiling. No defense. No awkward pride. Just a man finally learning how to understand a son he once tried to rewrite, and now was trying to read as he truly was. December arrived like it always does, quiet stress disguised as celebration. I went home for the holidays, but to my place this time. The crooked little attic apartment with the shaky heater and a shelf full of donated mugs. And this year, my parents came to me. My mom brought pie. My dad brought folding chairs. Caleb didn't come, but he sent a message, brief but different. Hope you're well. I mean that. Genuinely. I read it 3 times. Not because I trusted it, but because I wanted to believe it wasn't another performance. My mom noticed the lighthouse drawing on my wall. She asked, "Is that yours?" "No," I said. "But it's me." She didn't fully get it, but she smiled like she wanted to. And that was more than I'd ever been given growing up. We ate. We didn't fight. My dad washed the dishes and didn't correct how I stacked them. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to earn my place at the table. I built the table, and anyone who came in peace was welcome. Mid-January, Unseen crossed 50,000 users. We had moderators, actual funding, a grant from a foundation that usually supports mental health outreach. We weren't just a forum anymore. We were a lighthouse network. And with that came our first troll wave. Anonymous accounts flooded the site, calling users soft, dramatic, traitors to their families. Some tried to dox moderators. One even launched a fake crusade branding Unseen as anti-family propaganda. But I recognized the tone, the smug phrasing, the condescending little superiority tics. It was Caleb. Not directly, not provably, but I'd bet my entire lease on it. Old Caleb wouldn't have bothered. But now, I'd taken his audience. I'd become the mirror he couldn't smash. Jasper asked if he should go full DEF CON and digitally vaporize the troll. I told him no. Instead, I wrote a post, not under admin, but under my real name, titled, "A Note to the Ones Who Try to Unmake Us." I wrote, "You can troll us, mock us, even call your tantrum a crusade. But here's the truth. We're not scared of the spotlight anymore. You don't get to gatekeep visibility. We've built our own floodlights." And then I added, "And one last thing. If you're still out here calling yourself the golden child, just know the gold rubs off. But we forge ourselves." The post spread like wildfire. Donations tripled overnight. 3 therapists reached out wanting to partner. A teacher in Ireland asked if they could start an Unseen Teens chapter. And then, my phone rang. Blocked number. I picked up. "Is this you?" Caleb's voice. I didn't hang up. "Listen," he said. "I didn't mean for any of this to get so big." "Too late," I said. "I've lost a lot, man." "Then maybe stop building empires out of borrowed time and other people's silence." He hesitated. Then he asked quietly, "Do you really think I'm that bad?" "No," I said. "I think you're scared that you're not good." He didn't reply, and I didn't expect him to. I just let the silence settle, and for the first time, it felt like it belonged to me. I got invited to give the keynote at a youth mental health summit. Not because I was a doctor, but because I was visible. The theme was rebuilding from silence, which felt a little too on the nose. I walked on stage to polite applause and stepped off to a full standing ovation, but the real moment happened afterward. In the hallway, a girl, 16 maybe, stopped me with shaking hands. She didn't say hello. She said, "I sent Unseen a message 3 weeks ago. I was going to drop out of school." I nodded, gentle, careful. She pulled out her phone and showed me the reply one of our moderators had written. A paragraph, a resource link, and a single line that read, "You matter too much to disappear." She whispered. That line saved me. I didn't have anything profound ready. I just said, "I'm really glad you stayed." Later, on the train home, I cried. Not dramatic, just quiet gratitude leaking out of the places I didn't know were still bruised. When I got back to my apartment, a box sat at the door. No name, no label. Inside was a framed photo I'd never seen before. Me at 9 years old, half hidden behind Caleb's shiny new bike in a family Christmas picture, sitting by the fireplace reading a book. On the back, in my mom's handwriting, "We see you now." I sat on the floor staring at it until sunrise. That photo wasn't proof of love, it was proof of change. And sometimes that's the bigger miracle. I was invited back to campus that spring, not as a student, but as an honoree. They called it Emerging Voice in Digital Ethics. The ceremony was modest, folding chairs, a shockingly decent charcuterie board. Jasper came. My dad came too, wearing the tie I'd given him for Christmas 5 years ago. The one he never wore, not because he disliked it, but because he never imagined I'd be the reason he needed something nice. The dean gave a short speech, handed me the award, snapped the obligatory photo, and passed me the mic. I didn't talk about Caleb. I talked about what it means to be shaped in someone else's shadow, and what it means to leave it, not out of spite, but because the light exists with or without anyone's permission. I said, sometimes healing doesn't mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means reclaiming your name in a voice loud enough for yourself to hear. They clapped. I sat beside my dad, and he looked at me like he hadn't in years. Not like I was difficult or defiant or unfinished, but like I was his. Later, we sat in the car outside my apartment longer than necessary. He cleared his throat, classic stalling move, and said, "I'm not good at this part, but I want to say it before I talk myself out of it." Then he looked at me, voice tight. "You didn't just survive us, Mason. You evolved." He opened the glove box and handed me an envelope. Inside was a check. I started to decline, but he raised a hand. "It's not tuition. It's not an apology. It's support. No strings. Just because I believe in what you're building." I didn't take the money that night, but I kept the envelope. Because even that, especially that, was part of the story now. A reminder that growth isn't always cinematic. Sometimes it's just a father in a parked car, trying to unlearn. Summer felt different this time. The old me would have spent it chasing forgiveness I didn't owe or validation that evaporated on contact. Instead, I booked a cabin. No signal. No screens. Just me, a stack of books, and the unseen platform in maintenance mode, cared for by the incredible team we'd built. It didn't need me to breathe anymore, which meant I could breathe too. I spent 3 days sleeping in, then 3 more outlining a book, not a memoir, but a manual. Title, Scene, Building Value Without Permission. Each chapter structured like code, clean and reclaimable. I wrote about family systems as outdated architecture, identity as version control, boundaries as APIs, clear, firm, documented. By week 3, I had 42,000 words and a tan line shaped like a paperback. One night, under a sky so clear it felt almost threatening, I opened my email just to peek. There it was, subject, speaking invitation. TEDx. What happens after you walk out? I clicked yes without hesitation. Not for fame or closure or some poetic full circle moment, but for the kids still sitting in the background of their own family photos, trying not to take up space. 2 days before the talk, my mom texted, "We'll be in the audience." No pressure, just pride. Then she added, "Caleb asked if he could come too." We said yes. He wants to listen. I stared at that text for a long time. Not because I doubted it, but because, for the first time, it didn't matter. I didn't need his approval to tell the truth. And I didn't need anyone's presence to make me real. The night before the TEDx talk, I barely slept. Not from nerves. I'd spoken to bigger rooms and more hostile ones. But because this was the first time I'd tell the story out loud without hiding behind code or usernames or legal lines. This was my voice, unedited. Behind the curtain, mic taped to my cheek, pulse loud in my ears, I peeked through a crack. I saw my parents near the front, my mom's hand resting on my dad's. Caleb in the aisle seat, head down, no phone, no bravado. He looked smaller. Or maybe I finally saw him to scale. The host called my name. I stepped into the light. Spotlight. Silence. Heartbeat. Then I said, "Hi, I'm Mason. And I'm not the golden child. I'm the invisible one who walked out. And this is what happens next." I told them everything. Not to shame anyone, just to name what had happened. The slow erosion of self-worth disguised as comparison. The guilt-wrapped obligations marketed as love. The long, lonely war of trying to prove yourself to people who only ever recognize themselves in you, never you in you. I ended with this. I didn't build unseen to burn bridges. I built it because some of us were never invited across them in the first place. So we made our own. Applause echoed through the room. And then Caleb stood. He clapped, too. Afterward, he waited by the stage door. He didn't ask for forgiveness or explanations. He just said, "Thank you." I nodded. It was enough. That night, I sat by the hotel window with the award plaque resting in my lap. My phone shut off, my inbox overflowing with messages from people who finally felt seen. And for the first time, I whispered it out loud. I made it. Not fame, not recognition. Asterisk me. Asterisk I'd finally arrived in my own life. Fall rolled in like it owed me something. The talk went viral, not world-shattering viral, but enough to crash Unseen site for 2 hours. Enough to spark a call from a publisher. Enough to make me stop and realize I wasn't just telling a story anymore. I was becoming one. The book deal came with an advance. Not a fortune, but enough. Enough to clear the last of my student loans. Enough to retire the thrift store couch that felt like surrender every time I sat on it. Enough to buy my mom a secondhand upright piano she hadn't touched since I was a kid. I asked the publisher for one non-negotiable, final editorial control. Not out of paranoia, out of experience. I knew what it felt like to have your voice edited into someone else's comfort. They agreed. The working title stayed, Asterisk Scene. Asterisk, and I meant every page. Each chapter opened with a quote from anonymous, unseen users. The real ones, the quiet ones, the ones still living in houses where honesty came with a price tag. One wrote, "I'm 39. I've been the good daughter for 39 years. Your story made me realize I don't owe anyone another year of that." Another said, "I printed your post and taped it to my wall. My mom tore it down. I put up 5 more. By the 3rd draft, I knew exactly how the book would end. I typed the final line in bold, centered it, stared until it felt carved into stone. You don't have to disappear to be safe. You don't have to stay quiet to be good. You are allowed to exist out loud." I sent the draft off and cried. Not mourning tears, but the kind that taste like release. The book launched on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic. No champagne fountains. No balloons. Just a cardboard box on my doorstep filled with copies that smelled like ink and closure. I mailed the first one to my parents. Inside, I wrote something simple. Not a warning. Not a dig. Just truth. Thank you for learning to hold it. They texted the next morning, a picture of the book on their kitchen table, unfiltered. Followed by, "We're proud of what you made. Not who you've become. What asterisk you made." Asterisk because creation was the point all along. I wasn't the golden child. I was the forge. And now, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I was living like I already was. Somewhere in a campus dorm, a kid pulled my book off a library shelf and read that last line out loud. I know because they tagged me in a photo later. They underlined the word forge and scribbled "me too" in the margin. And I smiled. Because that's the real ending. Not applause, not revenge, not some cinematic redemption arc. Just one more unseen kid realizing they were never invisible to begin with.